Okay, I think I've called this something strange. What have I done? But good evening, everyone. We had an impromptu live discussion last week, and I've forgotten to change the title of the video quite unexpectedly. Never mind, it doesn't matter. So welcome if you're new to these things. I mean, basically, the way it generally works is it's up to you what we're going to discuss. I do actually have something to discuss, though, at the start. Someone's post on a forum, it could actually go on for some time, which we might start off with unless someone has something burning. Obviously, we know that Ian Hazacos is going to do another live Q&A this week. So I'll start off by saying that I will do a stream about the live Q&A. However, I'm not going to make the mistake. I'm not going to fall into the trap of trying to do it simultaneously with that because something went wrong last time and I'm not having it again. So here's what's going to happen. In 2 days from now, 2 days and 1 minute ago, they are going to start their live Q&A. The live Q&A lasts for about an hour. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give it an hour and a half and I will schedule another live discussion stream for 49 hours and 30 minutes from now, where we can then discuss the live Q&A. After they've done it, so I'll have to watch it live, but that should be no problem. I don't think I've got anything particularly on Thursday evening. Right, so good evening to everyone. Morning, yes. If you're in California, it is indeed good morning. Yes. I don't know about the Paladin Sensei anymore. I'm not really doing much. I didn't even do all those arguments about being casual. Someone trying to tell me that I'm not casual. I didn't even do any Mythic Plus this week. I actually, although I've technically played the game, I haven't actually done anything at all this reset at all. So I won't be opening up a cache next week because I haven't got anything. Basically what happened was someone from our group, we had like a group of social players, has gone even more casual than I have and hasn't even renewed their game subscription. So we didn't have anyone at the last minute. So there you go. Hi hello everyone. But yes, okay, so here we go then. Let's have a go at this one. So this is a post from the US forum. Now, I am going to preface this. Basically, this is the title of it. Method is ruining the game and esports. Now, I always do this whenever. The only reason I'm going to talk about this is because they've actually put some effort into the post, right? But I think it's. I'm not going to say it's without merit. I never say it's without merit if someone's thought about it. But, couple of things. First of all, there's a strong element of SSS, Special Snowflake Syndrome. Because sure enough, they're talking about hardcore raiders ruining the game, and when you look at their character, they are someone who does LFR exclusively. The last raid boss they ever did that wasn't LFR was normal something in Blackrock Foundry 2 expansions ago, and that was a normal, and that was one boss in that whole raid. So it seems to me like one of those people who, because he talks a lot about aspiring, it's not fair if you can't aspire to do certain things. Someone who doesn't want to put in the effort of being an organised raider, but also but wants to have the same accolades somehow. And then the other thing is what they're doing is they're comparing Blizzard's philosophy now with Blizzard's philosophy in 2005. And it has changed a lot, but I would also argue players have changed a lot as well. But shall we see what we think anyway? So, we'll read the whole thing. It's from a paladin, so they can't be all bad. So it says here, greetings everyone as well, by the way. It says, Method got world first Uldir. What a surprise. It actually was a surprise. I wish people wouldn't just go with the, Method got world first. Oh, well, they were expected to get world first and it happened. Oh, c'est la vie. Limit was super close. It was for the toss of a coin that it might have been the other way around. So it's not like they blew the competition away. Anyway, it says, while they celebrated, Blizzard was running around in panic mode because they were hemorrhaging subscribers. We don't know this. we know that subscribers are dropping, but they expect it at around about this time, and they'd planned for it because they had the Dreadwake mount, which I still haven't got, by the way. I'm going to run out of time soon and not actually get it at one point. So you say, yeah, actually thought Limit was going to win. You saw 1% wipe screenshots before the method kill. Yeah, I didn't see those, but yeah, people told me afterwards that, yeah, absolutely, that they were getting sub 1% wipes. That is not, oh yeah, Method were always going to win it. No, they were not. They just happened to do it. But they were pushed very, very close. So anyway, first, because he does say a couple of things that are just objectively, he can't say how many subscribers there are. No, only Blizzard know that. It's likely it's dipped, but then it was always going to dip after the first, month or so. It always does. That's why they keep trying to put content in to keep us in there. Because I keep saying a lot of that content is stuff that is going to be done by more serious players. Casual players don't give a crap. And it says, but how is that possible? Surely Method rubbing their world first awesomeness to our faces, which they never did, is supposed to make us want to play this game. Isn't that how eSports work? I don't know what it's on a personal rant here. Let's forget about that. It says, Blizzard is trying to make World of Warcraft into an esport, and this is destroying the game. It says, I have attached links to the BlizzCon 2005 World of Warcraft panels. We've all seen this ad infinitum. And we can see how far the game has gone away from those principles and how eSports and Method are making it worse. Well, a lot of those principles he's going to talk about have nothing to do with Method or recent design. But anyway. Higher. So his first comment was a quote, which he says, we have to give players something to aspire to. It says, in Vanilla WoW, when you saw someone in awesome raid or PvP gear, you said, I want to be like that guy, and then became inspired to raid in PvP. Now, here's what I'm going to say here as someone who played Vanilla. It was certainly true that people went, ooh, cool, because there was what I used to call the Ironforge catwalk. Because Ironforge, if you were Alliance, I don't care what you did as Horde. If you were Alliance, you were in Ironforge. The simple reason being, that's where the auction house was. Auction houses, although I think it happened during Vanilla, but I can't remember though, it might not have been. But to begin with, there was only one auction house for the Alliance in Ironforge. There was another one, I think it was Undercity for Horde. And then there was a couple, there was a neutral one in Gadgetson at least. There might have been another one somewhere else. I can't remember. That was a load of crap anyway. So basically, you're in Ironforge because that's where the auction house was. But people were certainly not inspired to raid and PvP. People tried the PvP route because they thought it was easy. People, what's the one in Everspring as well? I can't, and but Goblin places were where the neutral ones were. But Winterspring, yes, probably. There was a Goblin hideout there. But people were certainly not inspired to raid because of your gear, because effort. People did. Like on my realm, for example, it was quite notable. So here's how it worked out on I was on Asjel Nerub EU, and this is how it went. So in the first summer, we had our first Grand Marshal, who was a rogue called Cheeky, a Night Elf rogue, and he was stood in the Ironforge catwalk with all his Grand Marshal finery. He had his black ram, and he had his, all his martial gear, the epic gear, which was very good at the time, and weapons and all the rest of it. It's basically the equivalent of tier 2 gear at a time when the guilds were, the good guilds were just finishing Molten Core and moving on to Blackwing Lair, basically. So a lot of people looked at this and they thought to themselves, because the way PvP works then, it was just based on like these ratings. It was weird. I can't really explain it without going into too much detail. It doesn't matter. But what appealed to people was the fact you could be part of a raid, like a team, a PvP team, go and do battlegrounds and stuff like that and have big scraps in what was laughingly called World PvP. And everyone would share in the spoils. And that's what people did, because they thought that was the route to the gear. Because they thought, whereas they saw raiding, people tried out raiding, going to Molten Core with a big pug. And you kill yourself. Maybe if you were lucky, you'd kill a boss. And maybe you'd get a couple of BOEs off the trash. And so let's say you got 2 BOEs off the trash, because there was a lot of trash before the first boss. The first boss dropped 2 pieces of loot. Well, that's 4 pieces of loot for 40 people. It didn't take a lot of maths for people to think their chances of them getting loot was pretty slim. Whereas PvP, it was like, oh, everyone could get loot. And then about half a year later, I think the shine were all of these people that thought it'd be brilliant were still in shit gear. They're in PvP guilds but in shit gear, because in actual fact it didn't work like that at all. It was very much a hierarchy system. And whereas they suddenly saw people like myself in raiding guilds, all of a sudden everyone had epic gear. And it was like, oh wow. Because you might not get it every week, but over time you did get it. So, so then all of a sudden we had a huge influx of people applying to the raiding guilds. But even that was a small number of players. On my realm, there were 5 what you would call proper raiding guilds. Of varying quality, but there was only 5. That's not people going, ooh, shiny like your gear, I want to be a raider. That didn't happen at all. Most people will only do content that they can do casually. The vast majority of people. So first of all, that's straight away wrong. That's just straight up a lie. It says eSports completely destroyed that feeling. The feeling was never. I would say the feeling was never there. It says you can't. So again, I'm just going to ignore the eSports thing because he's just got a real bugbear. I think he's one of these people that says that they identify something they don't like. They say a thing is true, whether it is or not, and then say that that's the cause of it. It's a bit like, when Blizzard used to announce subscriber losses, and then someone would go in the forums, this is what I'm talking about, it's because you've done this thing. That's why 2 million people have suddenly stopped playing, because of this one thing I don't like. But anyway. Now it says here, interesting fact, Alex Afrasiabi was a top EverQuest raider, and Blizzard asked him not to get the world first Elixir when Vanilla WoW launched, blah, 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 blah. It says this is because Blizzard felt too many people would think they had inside knowledge if they continued this achievement trending. Wow, I don't know what that point that's trying to make. It says, unlike today where Method... See, this is wrong as well. It says, unlike today where Method internally tests the raids for Blizzard. No, they don't. They don't at all. Before anyone has even seen them. I don't know where he's getting this from. Blizzard do have their own internal testing team. They're not Blizzard. Not Blizzard. They are Blizzard. They're not Method. In fact, there was a lot of talk about this because Ian had the reason why they messed up the tuning in on Kill Jaden was because they didn't trust their own internal testing team. They thought their own internal testing team was shit. They thought, oh, they can beat this boss. Oh, Method are going to cream it. We'd better ramp it up, make it more difficult. And then it turned out that their internal testing team was actually a lot better than they gave them credit for. So they tune it down again. So that's a lie. That's just straight up. Well, I say a lie. It's either a lie or they've just... I don't understand how it cannot be a lie because where have they got information from? It's just not true. It says, if Method didn't get to test raids, would they still get... Well, there's a difference between... Unless he just doesn't understand the difference between internal testing and beta PTR testing, which is what anyone could do. There was a raid test yesterday, wasn't there, or something? Anyone could have done that. Now it says, imagine when Classic WoW releases a Method gets World First Ragnaros on the first week. Who? What? Why would Method even care about that? Anyway, they won't get World First Ragnaros. World First Ragnaros was over a decade ago. It says, how will that make you feel as a level 14 player killing Quilbert? I don't know what he's talking about here. Does anyone know what he's talking about? But anyway, we'll come to a couple of more points. It says, like the negative psychological effects of beauty standards nowadays where the media present unrealistic standards and all it leads is to eating disorders and negative psychological impacts. Now, on that one, he's potentially... If it were the case, I think, that Blizzard are saying that this is what you should do, then I would say, okay, he might have a point. But if not, I don't know where he's getting from. So you're saying SCO's already said they're not going back to race for World First in Classic? No, of course not. Why would they? Absolutely ridiculous. Method isn't bothering with Classic. I don't blame them. It's been done. Like, there is not going to be another... How can you have another World First Ragnaros? There was already a World First Ragnaros bloody ages ago. Have I played Blood? I haven't played anything on Steam. I don't use Steam. How would I feel if Warhammer 40k and AS were adapted to the video game scene in the same fashion? Like, here's the thing. In terms of Warhammer, like, people keep saying you should play Total War Warhammer, and it might well be an awesome game. It's not the same as physically playing it. What I like about this is it's physically playing it. Anyway, according to Caleb. Sounds to me like this guy is complaining about something that doesn't affect him at all and he's wrong anyway. Well, this is it. Well, no, this is where I think the special snowflake syndrome comes in. The reason why I'm picking on this is one, he's at least gone to some effort to try and make a point, but he's basing it on things that are just downright wrong. But this is part of what sometimes I think causes problems with the communication between the community and Blizzard. Because you've got to imagine, Blizzard community managers have to read shit like this all day. And it's probably where they get the idea that we're all idiots and all imbeciles. Because first of all, they'll try and base their argument on something that's just not true. And then even then, the argument is vague. Because ultimately, people like the game. That's why they play it. And then something comes along that they don't like about it. And then they try and make out that the thing that they don't like is down to poor design. Now, if you can argue that case, then that's fine. But you can't just base it on something that's just wrong. As I say, this is someone who's saying, oh, hardcore raiding is hurting the game. Reality check, they're not a raider of any kind. They do LFR. They are an LFR hero. But anyway, let's look back at some of the quotes from Blizzard 2005. It says, we want to challenge the player so they feel a sense of accomplishment. Jeff Kaplan, you could turn that knob of difficulty, which is spelt wrong, but never mind, of difficulty up on the players, but if you ratchet it up too high, it creates a lot of frustration. Now, I would argue that the way Blizzard have managed that is by coming up with different difficulties of it. Because now you can do the raid, well, he's doing it to LFR raid. He certainly can't argue that the difficulty's been ratcheted up too far there. But this is what they've got to see all day. It says, when people see Method playing this game 14 hours a day and wiping over 600 times in a World First race, what impression does this give the playbase? Someone made a very good comment in reply to this, which is, back in vanilla, that's what you did. Not if you were hardcore. It was quite common, I was telling you about, on my realm, there were like 5 raiding guilds. We all raided every day, 7 days a week. Doesn't matter whether you were still kicking about in Blackwing Lair when the rest of us were on Naxxramas. Everyone raided every guild raided every single day. Not necessarily every player, because when you've got a roster, when you need 40 for a raid, you've probably got a roster of 50 to 60. You kept it as low as you could, but some guilds a bit higher. And then that meant there was a fair amount of... You have your hardcore 20 to 25 players who would be there every single day. And then you might have another 20 or 30, if you're unlucky, that would be there sometimes. But yeah, you raided every single day. Whereas nowadays, you've got people who are competing inside the top 100 that raid, 9 hours a week? Not even that, maybe 8 or 9 hours a week, some of them. So, in actual fact, it's much less so. It says that's part of their job, though, to separate the bullshit posts from the constructive, sensible ones. Yeah, it is. But I'd say, to be fair, can you imagine if you're having to read this all the time? I'll give you an example, like a parallel example in my industry. Like when I used to teach in schools, you always have a department in your schools whose job, they give them a fancy title, these people, but effectively it's their job to deal with the naughty kids. And when I say naughty, that's a nice way of putting it. The proper arseholes. Now, you can imagine from that point of view, and I've seen it break some people, because day in, day out, every minute of their working life is spent trying to get these reprobates to behave in something like a civilized manner. And it breaks them. I've seen it. I've seen people get severely depressed doing jobs like that. So I can sort of understand a little bit when they're reading crap like this every day, that it will distort their view of us. Because they've got, as I say, on the one hand, people saying it's fantastic, everything they're doing is fantastic. But then on the other hand, you get someone putting this stuff like this on. And it's blatantly rubbish. And then it's difficult for them to weed out the sensible feedback. It says, back in vanilla, you did Nax all the time. You only heard stories about Nax since you'd joined. Back in vanilla, I did Nax all the time. Of course, I only heard stories about Nax since I joined in MOP, and I've done it a lot for Mogs. Yeah. Well, let's think. So out of those 5 guilds that I would say were proper raiding guilds on my realm, so at the time when I was doing Nax, I was in the top guild. The second one also did it. And we've both got fairly far in. The other 3 killed a few bosses in it. I think everyone could clear the Spider Wing. It was a piece of piss. And then you would probably kill Noth. That wasn't too bad. You'd kill the first boss in each wing. So you'd kill Instructor Azuvius, you'd kill Noth, and you'd kill the Spider Wing. So all of those guilds killed at least those 5 bosses. But you had to be fairly coordinated even to do those. Like, you had to be a raiding guild. You weren't going to really pug them. You think the problem is they tried to change things so dramatically, they've no idea how it's going to play out in real time with players. Sometimes they make changes. I would argue that most of the changes they make that are quite dramatic, there is time. The problem is, of course, they don't really seek the feedback. Again, he's going on about method, you know, going for getting this internal testing thing. Also, he's saying about, you know, he's talking about the fact it would be an advantage if raids weren't externally tested at all. Anyone who's played back then knows full well that was not a good thing, because the raids that had limited or no external testing were bugged to crap. They just didn't work. Like, who remembers Lady Vash, for example? You know, or Gruul. It was a nightmare. Absolute nightmare, because it didn't bloody work, that's why. It doesn't help that with almost every expansion, Blizzard tries to reinvent the wheel when in some cases no massive changes are needed. No, Iron Temple, that is exactly my argument. I've argued that for many years. The problem is, hi Chris, the problem is and they're stuck with it now. To be fair, like, if I was suddenly made game director, I don't think I would change it, simply because it's just established now. But that was a huge... What's the chat tonight? At the moment, we're talking about imbeciles on the forums, which I'm trying to show a little bit of sympathy towards the Blizzard community managers at the moment. But it's... Yeah, I don't know why they have to make changes to the game that are not necessary. An expansion should be a new content, new zones, new lands, new quests, you know, a new major story arc. Beyond that, yeah, if there's some classes that need some work and stuff like that, sure, bring them in. But yeah, just get the classes working, and once they're working, leave them alone. And obviously, as you build in new systems to the game, at a certain point, the classes will need modernising again. Then just keep on top of it. You missed the extreme customization. Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, it was better customization. I'm not sure it was all that brilliant. Blizzard argued a lot about... I'm going to get rid of this guy now, actually. I think we've had enough of him. Blizzard argued a lot about cookie cutter builds, didn't they? And it was true. You know, you did have cookie cutter builds. But it was better than it is now. I'm not saying it's perfect. I mean, I would still prefer we had proper customization. I know it's difficult in an MMO, more difficult than in a single player role playing game. But you know, what do you mean save the gnomes? We're not saving any gnomes. Who's save the gnomes come from? Who said save the gnomes? Gnomes' lives do not matter. Well, they do matter in so much as they must not exist. Azeroth armor artifacts, they're terrible substitutions for Reforging. Oh, well, yeah, Reforging's another sore point, isn't it? Because they keep changing their story on why we don't have Reforging in the game. Even to the point where they've contradicted themselves. But they're not, for whatever reason, which they're not telling us, they're not having it. That annoys me. That does annoy me a little bit when they have a reason for not wanting something in the game, or they have a reason for putting something in the game that is perplexing, and they just don't tell us. Like, I would rather they just came out and says, look, we've got a reason, we're not telling you because we think you're all as thick as shit. I would prefer they said that than to try and come up with something that's clearly not the reason. If you as game director, gnomes would be able to be paladins. Yes, well, you're not. So we're in no danger of that. Do I have to play the audio again? I already did that last week. In D3, there's this cube. Yeah, I've seen the cube thing. I've never really used it because I never played it enough. It's to do with the legendaries. We can spend collected mats to re-roll an item. You know, it can Titanforge, Warforge, higher item level. Do I think they might do that in WoW? Well, people keep pointing out that since Legion, we've had an awful lot of Diablo 3 stuff in it. I suppose it wouldn't surprise me. It wouldn't surprise me. You actually think Paladins made out pretty nice heading into BFA? There was an interesting comment by Hakili on Twitter tonight, who's basically asking a question for his... Because get your questions in for the Q&A, by the way, if you've got a question. His question was, look, there are some people, senior theory crafters for certain specs, that have direct communication with the Blizzard development team. So Rep Paladins, we have Soul Sacra, for example. Now, not all specs have this, because not all specs have an intelligent senior theory crafter that they want to talk to, basically. Now, what he was arguing was, he was saying that the ones who have this direct communication seem to have a more robust spec. So what can Blizzard do to help communicate with the other specs that don't have someone for that? Now, I would argue that although Ret is by no means a disaster area, it still does suffer from the things it just always seems to suffer from. In a raid, I'll give two examples actually. Cenarian from Legion, and then Fetid Devourer from BFA. So in Fetid Devourer, you'll notice Ret Paladins are not generally taken on that fight on Mythic. Reason being, not very good at clearing the ads. Ads super important. So what a lot of raid leaders, and this includes raid leaders of high-end guilds, top 100 guilds, they think to themselves, Ret Paladins no good, we might as well not take them. But that's blinkered thinking. Now, what I'm saying is, yes, they're not good for killing the ads. They're terrible. In fact, if you've got a Ret Paladin in that raid, what you should do is just leave them on the boss. But it's not like that's a bad thing, because you don't need all of your DPS to kill the ads. You need a lot of them. You certainly couldn't take a load of Ret Paladins or Enhancement Shamans or the other specs that are not right good at those dealing with those ads. But you can take some and leave them on the boss if they've got very high single target damage. Now, the example I was going to draw parallel with Cenarian, because that was or Cenarius, behave yourself. That was a parallel example from Legion. That was one where ads would appear and they must be killed immediately. You cannot mess about with those ads. They had to be killed. I would have been useless at that. But in the guild I was in, I just joined a guild and we were on that, and they said to me, you stay on the boss. The ads died because we didn't need all the DPS on it. There was myself and actually 2 other people on the boss. The fact that they put 3 people on the boss who were crap at ads but bloody good at single target damage on a boss meant that the ads got taken care of because we didn't need everyone to do it, and the boss was able to transition before another set of ads came up. So we made that phase easier as well, and we got into the post-ad phase. And but too many raid guilds, even good ones, don't think in those terms. They just think, oh, ads, we have to kill them straight away. Therefore, every DPS we take must have them. And that's where a class suffers, a spec suffers. But at the same time, Blizzard could think to themselves, so I'm trying to scan some comments now. Blizzard could think to themselves, oh, well, that's the community's fault for being thick. And sure, it could be. But when you've got World 100 guilds doing that, they ought to do something themselves, really. Also, our AoE is crap. But they are working on that. They are working on that, to be fair. Anyway, sorry, let's try and go back here. You left after WoD, and when you came back for BFA, the game was unrecognisable. Oh, well, that's what they do. Make so many changes. So many changes. Can I imagine the old school talents being continued to BFA? What you mean old school as in proper old school? I don't know what you mean by that statement then, if that's the case. You miss your artifact from Legion. Yeah, I do. You love the feeling of unlocking a new appearance. Oh, no, I don't bother about that. The best Ashbringer appearance, as far as I was concerned, was the one you got for completing the first set of traits. Just getting the traits. That didn't take long to do. And then I had my... That's the one I use right now. That's the one I use absolutely now. It was an easy one to get. So I didn't really farm too many of the others. I didn't farm any, in fact, actually. Although I have a few others just incidentally. You've got a 385 Azerite chest from your Alts Mythic Plus. Oh... 385 chest from your main Smithy Plus cash and 3737. Oh, I thought you were going to say that even your main doesn't have that. Because the problem with that, of course, is you could, if you're someone who has your main character for raiding and you're out for just doing whatever, but it's a good one, you're doing your plus 10s, you could easily end up with better Azerite gear on your alt than your main, couldn't you? That's another flaw with that system, isn't it? How annoying would that be? The secret surprise of Warhammer 40k, the human race's god emperor is actually a gnome. Wouldn't surprise me. It's locked up in a tomb anyway, isn't it? As far as I don't really follow 40k too much. You would sincerely hope that they didn't add in a Kanai cube to, is that what it's called? That would just be more RNG on top of what was already excessive RNG. Do you really think that would stop them? Really? There is no need for classes to be balanced. It should be that all classes can bring something that only they have to a group of raid. Yeah, your problem with that thinking is, and that is Blizzard's thinking, is it doesn't work in practice. Because you get some classes and specs who, from a raiding point of view, bring something on every fight. It's like if you're recruiting and you're choosing which classes to recruit, and it'll be like, oh, this class brings something really awesome for the first boss that's really easy. This class brings something really awesome on the last boss, which is really hard, where you'll take that one over them. But then Class C brings something really awesome on every fight. You'll take them because they're always awesome. Because the secret, like especially at Mythic Raiding, the most important thing, more important than what class you play or anything like that, the most important thing is you've got a group of players playing as a team. It's a proper team effort. A lot of players, even Mythic Raiders, play individually. They're I've seen it before. They screw other people over just to improve their DPS or whatever. They don't care about it. They're not working in a cohesive way. The best thing you can do is get a team. And the way you get a team working is, as far as possible, have the same people in. The best guild I was ever in, the highest world rank guild I was ever in and progressing with, was actually in TBC. And in that guild, when it was 25-man raiding, 20 of us were there every single raid. We had a roster of 30 people. 20 people were the core raiders. We were the ones who made every single raid, and we were in for every single raid on progress. And then the other 10 people were good players, but ones that were okay sitting out now and then, because it suited them as well, because every now and then they couldn't make it either. So it suited them because they got to be in a good guild when they couldn't really commit to basically 100% attendance. But at the same time, the downside was a lot of the time when they weren't available, they were just sat out. But that was because you had 20 people out. 80% of the raid were always there, and we knew each other. We coordinated with each other. We were comfortable talking to each other, and it worked really well. And that's why we got like World 70 or something on the first form of Kill Jaden. You would say, oh no, I've done that one. There is no need for classes to be. Oh, you've said that. I've said that one as well. Sorry. Where am I up to? I want to hear, Caleb. You meant as far as making change for the sake of change, Paladins had mostly minor improvements, while a lot of classes felt nice in Legion, but they made changes that, in my opinion, made them a lot less fun. Yeah, well, this is where it comes into, like, we were talking directly with the Rep Paladin class designer, and he's quite sensible as well. I wish he hadn't have fannied about so much on the AoE, because they were coming up with ideas for the AoE even before it went live, and didn't implement anything. I wish he was a bit more like decisive, I have to say. But he's very sensible and he's very engaging. Now, if you happen to have your class designed by someone who is either not engaging or there's no one from your community talking directly to them, then they're going to do it themselves. Do I think they're going to add a Valor-like token vendor in BFA for current content? Well, I don't know what you mean by... If you mean like we had in Legion, then yes, they will absolutely do that. They're just waiting for the second tier to come out. When the equivalent of you know, Tomb of Sargeras comes out, yes, there'll be a vendor to get stuff. It's catch-up. They always do catch-up. Even in vanilla, they did catch-up gear. You were the only paladins who cheesed with Bop on tank and then you taunt Divine Shield before the spear. Oh, on Scenarius. Yeah, I remember that trick. Yeah. Yeah, we tried that. When they're going to fix Ret's mobility. Well, didn't you see a couple of weeks ago, they put Divine Steed on an 8-second duration and then 24 hours later took it off again. So it shows they're thinking about it, though. It does show they're thinking about it. Azeroth fix this week doesn't help Mythic Raiders. It's nice for else. New system does not help get 385 with the right traits. And 370 with random stuff not helping. No, I think, to be fair, this is where people, I think, have a real grievance with it. Blizzard at BlizzCon specifically said you will be able to target the traits you want on Azeroth gear, didn't they? That's not me making it up, isn't it? That is what they said. It's not actually true. You can't target it at all. They did say that. I'm not getting it wrong, am I? I know they obviously, what they really, since then we can imagine what they meant by that is that it's not randomly generated traits on the armor, they're fixed. But because you can't get Azeroth armor from Mythic Plus dungeons directly, it's not targetable. To be fair, even if you could, it still wouldn't really be targetable because you've got to have a key at the right level. If you're a Mythic Raider, anything less than a +10 is not really useful to you. So you've got to then find someone with a +10 in that dungeon. So, we don't have any. But it should certainly be said we shouldn't use homophobic language here, please. You can have a little time out. Right, okay. Obviously, it still shows on here, so it doesn't actually get deleted. Where was that? Oh, there we go. Right, okay. The acquisition system. Yeah, it is. I don't know. I know their general philosophy, obviously, with gear is, like I've said this before, they want us to be constantly getting upgrades, but they also never want us to finish upgrading our character. That's how it has to work, isn't it? They need to keep giving us gear so that the gear horny people, which they assume is every player, is not going for a period of time without an upgrade. But they can't let us finish, otherwise we'll stop playing. So they think. As I say, they have this mindset that all we care about is loot. Might be true for some. Well, I know it is true for some people, but I just think they overplay it. But that's why they do it. That's why they keep giving out all this basically free gear. They need everyone. Because it's mostly targeted at the casuals as well. Because more serious players, they might chunter about not getting any upgrades for a couple of weeks, but they're doing the raiding or they're doing the Mythic Plus. They're doing whatever competitive activity requires that they put in the effort every week anyway. Because it's not just gear they're getting like achievements or whatever, however they view it. It's really targeted at casual players. Which is why you get a 370 piece just for rocking up and doing a warfront every time it rolls around. It's mad. It's mad. It's cool Paladins have a rep that communicates with Blizzard. I wish every class had that. You still feel there's plenty of concise and helpful feedback on forums. Yeah, I mean, you say that it's not all beers and skittles, though, because they don't always listen to our senior theory crafters, it has to be said. You know, they do sometimes ignore them, and they're never wrong. That's the annoying thing. You know, the senior theory crafters of the game, when they, and I don't mean in terms of, obviously some things are opinion based, aren't they? In terms of what is fun, that's an opinion. But when they say this isn't going to work because of this, and they've got the math to prove it, and then Blizzard ignore them, it always goes wrong. It always ends in tears. Upgrade token. Well, see, that's what I would quite like, to be honest with you. From, if you got like some tokens or currency or whatever, when you completed certain types of content, that eventually build up to some gear, it would help smooth it out a bit, you know. But Blizzard don't want that, because then that would allow you to eventually get the gear you want. That's no good. It must always be dangled in front of you. It's a carrot on a stick approach. You know, it's you've got to feel that it's almost there, that you can just get it, just another week and you'll get it. No, you won't. You'd be happy with a token vendor to buy gear for specific slots when RNG decides to go ridiculously stingy. Well, I mean, I talked about this, haven't I, before with, you know, I think they should let you buy an Azeroth piece of, or one option. There were several options. But if you had a token, like Hydrocore, whatever, although someone went mad when I suggested it, said, no, I need that for Cauldrons. But whatever, something that you could use for just once a week from a vendor, get an Azeroth piece that is appropriate to your item level, just to help smooth it out, just to let some people who are doing mythic bloody bosses with a 340 pair of shoulders, just for the love of God, give them a pair of shoulders. Oh, hi Hakan. Should we accept for the palace stuff? I need to put my videos on a podcast. Yeah, people keep saying that. I don't know. Maybe. Keep putting it off. The entire concept of that undead council that want to die shows free will there. Well, no. Well, where are we talking about Forsakens on free will now? Because that's something that's cropping up again. With obviously, I did that video, didn't I, on the Darkshore Warfront. There were some people not happy with that storyline. I can understand why as well. Yeah, the idea of a load of night elves being killed and then voluntarily becoming Forsaken doesn't really sound right, does it? You're finding BFA boring at the moment as you have no achievable goal to aim for. Well, what sort of goals do you generally like to do, Terry, in the game? Do I think that classes feel different from each other more since the start of pruning? No, not at all. I have never at any point during this game ever felt that classes are similar to each other. In fact, I've never thought they felt similar, but I feel they feel more similar now than they used to do, for the reason being that they, instead of trying to design 12 classes, they're trying to design 36 classes. That's what they're doing, and they've actually said that as well. Ever since Legion, I've felt that that's what they were doing by trying to make the specs super unique. But Ian Hazakos actually said so recently. That what they're actually... Was it the AMA? I think it was at the AMA when he was saying what we're really doing is designing 36 classes. And that's what it's like. And that's where you get the similarity. You can just about do 12 classes and make them feel unique. You can't do 36. It's too many. But that's what they're trying to do. And therefore, they feel more similar. I still don't think they're similar. I still think they do quite a good job on balance. But I think if they, like I keep saying, the classes should, all the different specs of the classes should have a lot of things in common. Obviously, there has to be differences for those slightly different roles. And even a pure DPS class, let's say a mage, you know, there should be fire, arcane, and frost should play in a very similar way, but obviously have different outcomes. Maybe one of them's better for single target, one's more for AoE, one's more for DPS on the move, maybe. You know, something like that. The majority of that council were then shot down by Sylvanas. Yes, indeed. And that was the thing. She had planned to do so in advance as well. Everyone kept saying, "Oh no, she only did it when she started seeing them walking across." That's when she gave the order. But those troops were already assembled and knew what to do. She didn't have to tell them what to do. She just said go. So she'd already planned it in advance. Anyway, you're currently waiting for a ticket to be answered since the Horde US mission didn't work after you used the item. You're disappointed the game feels incomplete. Yes. I mean, that is again the fact that this game is... It hasn't. I mean, it's got like. It's probably still got fewer problems than a brand new MMO. But it seems to have also more problems than we've been used to in the past. I do think they've been rushed on it. But again, I have limited sympathy when they spent so much development time on things they shouldn't have done. There were certain things that they should have... They're just so bad at prioritising, really are. There were things they spent a lot of time doing that nobody asked for. They did it anyway. And they should have gone, do you know what? No one's asking for this. We want to do it for whatever reason. We'll do it later because we haven't got time now. But no. Instead, they sacrificed class development. As well as making sure everything works. What if Night Elves willingly turning undead are doing so to get closer to Sylvanas in a double-crossy way? You mean Elune has forsaken them so they need another way to continue fighting for vengeance? That would be interesting if they're... But they'd all collectively have to be doing this, wouldn't they? Like, how do you know, as a Night Elf that's just been raised into a Dark Ranger, that the other 11 that did the same have all got the same idea as you have? You know? It's tricky. Another thing I don't understand about that. Right, someone help me out here, lore-wise. Here's what I don't understand. Here's my understanding of it. Wisps are Night Elf spirits. Okay? Dead Night Elves. We even got told that, because it used to be a bit like, yeah, it's sort of like this. But then it was made explicitly clear in the, like, burning of Teldrassil scenarios. Wisps are fallen Night Elves. When Night Elves are killed, wisps. We've killed Night Elves. How are we raising them up like this? Aren't there spirits in the wisps? I don't get that. So there's something there I'm not quite understanding. Have I played as Alliance with War mode on? Oh, I don't know who that's towards. It's certainly not me. You know I haven't. Lots of builder spender classes, lots of combo point classes. Yeah, little aspects like that are. But like, let's say, you know, Feral Druid, Windwalker Monk, Rogue, of course, and Ret Paladins all have that combo type thing. But I wouldn't say they play the same. I think they're all played differently. They all have that system. But you have to have a resource system. You know, there aren't 12 different resource systems you can have. But I think they're different enough. You're a Mythic Raider that has 340 Azeroth gear in 2 slots. Up until last week, getting your piece upgraded. Finally. Yes, I can imagine that is hideously annoying. And it's something that Blizzard never should have allowed. That's absolutely ridiculous. It is truly ridiculous. War mode is World PvP. Yeah, it's not what I call World PvP. But I can't really say anything about it. I noticed Az has brought a video out today about it. But I really couldn't comment because I don't engage in it. I don't like it. I don't know whether it's still going strong or whether it ever was going strong. I know a lot of people approve of it. I approve of it. I approve of it specifically because I can opt out of it. But it's never what I would consider to be World PvP. World of Warcraft has never had anything approaching what I consider World PvP. Simple answer to the question, and Necromancer did it. Well, yes. Elementals should get Lightning Bolt castable while moving again. Well, why not? I don't really understand why they have... I don't really understand why casters must always plant their feet anyway to do anything. I think they all at least should be given a common cooldown that allows you to cast on the move. Not a talent, an actual thing. Just like all melee gets an interrupt on a like maximum of 15-second cooldown, I think all casters should get something that on a reasonably regular basis allows you to move and cast for, say, what? 5 seconds? If you can do that every 20 seconds, that would probably help a lot. I mean, I'm sure PvP players would moan. I don't care about that. Make it so it doesn't work in PvP if necessary. I don't know. People seem to have calmed down in war mode. On some US servers, people let you do your PvP quests and wait politely for their turn, even cheering you on. So just like it was in League in the old days when we had just PvP realms then. So the novelty's worn off a little bit for some. Mage used to have Scorch. I think do they not still have Scorch? I think they do. But I don't think you can really do much with it. I don't think it's much of a compensation for doing it on the move. BM Hunters are laughing. Absolutely. Oh, do you know what? When I play my BM Hunter, because I used to use it as an alt for a bit in Legion, I used to just run and jump around just for a laugh when I was DPSing. Just because I could. Not because I needed to go anywhere. Just because I could. I used to taunt the mages and the warlocks. Look at me, jumping up and down in front of them whilst doing my DPS. Look what I can do. Made no difference even if it affected my DPS because my pet did most of the damage anyway. Casters can plan their movement phases. They can. It's easier from melee from that point of view, but I still think it's an unnecessary burden, I have to say. The only reason it exists, that the fact that they have to plant their feet, is as some feeble compensation for the fact that melee gets screwed over on so many bosses. But the problem is that the mechanics that screw melee over still screw melee over. It doesn't screw ranged over anymore just because they can't move. Because, as you say, they can pick their spot to a certain extent. So, the whole... There's just something fundamentally wrong with encounter design from a point of view of melee and range DPS. There really is. But they don't see it, so they'll never fix it. It's just always going to be as it is. You do the same thing moving around with your Boomy when Stellar Drift and Legendary Braces would go to. You say having limited movement adds depth to a class. Doesn't really when, for most fights, it doesn't matter. In the majority of fights, you don't need to move. And it makes it worse. Because on things like Talok, for example, so when you get the puddles and you're going to drop a load of shit, there's a lot of range players don't really move it properly out of the way. Reason? Because the further they move, the more DPS they're losing. Whereas a melee will do it, because as soon as they're away from the boss, they're doing no DPS. It makes no difference to them whether they move it, drop it in the proper place or drop it in the wrong place. But for a ranged, it's like, well, I'll make a bit of a show of moving, but I've got a bloody fireball just come here. I've got my fire blast ready, or a fire blast you can cast on the move. I'm making spells up because I don't actually play a caster. But, ranged are the worst for those sort of mechanics. They're the absolute worst because they're just used to standing still and doing whatever the hell. They'll only move out of shit if it's going to kill them. They think nothing of dropping it in everyone's way. So I have to disagree on that one, just simply because the majority, I can see where you're coming from, but the majority of ranged are arseholes when it comes to any mechanics like that. Now, if they could cast on the move, at least for a short period of time on a regular basis, that might encourage them to move to the right bloody place and drop their shit. What are my thoughts about sending light sail microprobes propelled by lasers on Earth to Proxima Centauri? I say, what? Well, they're going to have to, aren't they? Because, sciencey question, but the the European Space Agency won't use radioactive power cells, so they rely on solar power. And the Rosetta mission had the massive, massive solar panels, and it was only operating out a little bit beyond Mars, really. So that's not really a prospect for deep space stuff. The NASA, the United States Agency, they're quite happy using nuclear fuel cells, but they're running out. So there needs to be a new propulsion system. So, yes, firing very small probes on lasers would be the ideal way to do it. You want a new animation for Avengers Shield? Why? What's wrong with the Avengers Shield animation? Or do you just want change because it's been like that for a while? But you say proves your point because it adds depth because better players will handle the puzzles better. No, they won't. No, no, no. No. They don't. The better players are the worst of all for it. They're perfectly capable of moving, but they don't. They're the worst buggers for it. They're the ones who want their rank ones. No, 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 no. The ones who move are not the better players. The ones who move are the better teammates, which is not the same thing. And it'd be lovely to think that in like good mythic guilds, it's full of people all playing as a team. Bollocks, is it? In the very best ones, it is obviously method limit, and those likes have to play. They're not beating the content they're doing in the time they're doing it if they're not playing as a team. But there's plenty of good guilds where not everyone plays well as a team. They're all in it for themselves. And the only way you will kill that boss is if you just design your strategy around the fact that they are going to screw everyone over. So you might as well give them the tastiest assignment and not expect anything of them. Anyway, where was I? You think it's fine if range have to move, but certain range like demo locks have poor mobility and no instant cast and their DPS. Well, demo locks have their pets though, don't they? Does that not? Is that not like Beastmasters? I don't really know, but does that not like? Does that not work like Beastmasters where they do most of those? Says my argument is based on the fact you have bad players in my guild. I have no players in my guild, or even that all the good range DPS stopped years ago. It's always been the case. This has always been the case. And I've been in some very good guilds. I've been in some not so good guilds. But I've been in some top 100 guilds. And you get the same thing. You always get the same thing. Obviously, the higher up, the fewer of these players there are. But you still have them. They know how to move just enough that they don't die. Yes, absolutely. But it doesn't matter if someone else dies as a consequence of what they do. That's the problem. Is it only you that wants the kata animation for Templar's Verdict back? I would like any animation for Templar's Verdict that is not the one we have. I do not like the upside down wings. I think it looks ridiculous. And it's not even like I can sometimes ignore it when I'm properly zoomed out, sure. But sometimes when you get caught, like happens a lot in a dungeon, you get caught into a corridor and your camera's forced to zoom in. I can see it. I don't like it. BM has unlimited movement. It does. But nonetheless, what I was saying about demo is, nonetheless, if BM had to do something, like sometimes you've got to remember hunters have to use aspects of the turtle. They're not doing any DPS then. Oh, except they are because their pet's doing their DPS for them. So I would imagine, but I don't know, but I would imagine demo locks have a similar thing. But anyway. But, well, I mean, there's obviously some new animations still coming out. Some of them look a bit basic, a bit rough and ready. I did that one on new animations for Paladins at the weekend, and someone pointed out I'd missed out Flash of Light, which indeed I had. I'd not noticed that. But it's a bit crap, really. I don't think it's just red rain. But, they're doing some, even if it... Because I think for some people, they probably like it just because it's new. I think some people just like new or updated animations now and then. Could change so casters are slowed while casting. Yeah, that could work. 50% speed while casting might be alright. It still wouldn't shift their arse to the proper place to drop their puddles. Because, Or would... Well, I suppose it depends how long they get. But yeah, if there was no actual... If it didn't stop your DPS to move at all, that's actually not a bad idea, Marius, yeah. If it's slowed by 50%, because you could still do your full DPS on the move, couldn't you? Because you'd still be presumably within range of the boss, or whatever you were attacking. You'd just be moving through treacle. Yeah, that's not a bad idea, actually. We can't suggest that, of course, because Blizzard don't like suggestions. You prefer having classes that play well over looking pretty? Oh, absolutely. That's always my first focus. Is does the class work? Main difference between BM and demo is if demo have to move their DPS plummets. Yeah, well that's why demo locks were like the worst in Legion. I guess it's the same now, because the arseholes would never switch to ads. The argument always been, oh yeah, but my DPS goes down. But the thing is, if you have an ad that has to die before it gets a cast off or something, and it gets its cast off and it's on like 1% health, your shit DPS would have finished it off and we wouldn't have wiped. So you get a lot of that. Oh well, because I'm not very good at switching targets, I won't do it. I was never any good at switching targets, but I still bloody did it. Or the turret casters suffer similarly, but not as badly. Well, the thing is, though, but again, this is where the teamwork comes into it. And this is where even good mythic guilds, not all, but some good mythic guilds, still, they have this mentality about the individual rather than... basically, if World of Warcraft raiders played football, they'd all try and play striker. No one would be in goal. You'd have 11 people trying to push up the pitch every single time. Because that's the mentality of a lot of people. They want to be the best. Even the bloody healers want to top the damage and things like that. And the tanks want to beat the other tank on damage. In MOP, they wanted to beat everyone on damage. And did. And that's the problem there. See, so I remember trying to get through occasionally. Well, this is why we never really held on to demo lots, because we're idiots. But getting across the idea that your personal DPS will go down, but we won't wipe if you do this thing. Would that not make football a lot more interesting? No, we don't need basketball type scores in football. You know, the strategy is more enticing. Anyway, all it would involve is 22 people tripping up over blades of grass, rolling around on the floor like their knees just exploded. Don't need to see 90 minutes of that, thank you very much. Beat everyone, damage and healing if you were properly. I had I got moaned at where in TBC, when the pre-Wrath patch came out, they made some changes to judgments. Now, at the time, there were different judgments for different things. So you had, and in Wrath, they brought out specifically different judgments. Not just like TBC and Vanilla, where you judge the effect of a seal. There were actually different judgments. So one of the judgments put a debuff on the target where if you hit it, it did some healing for you. That existed in Vanilla, but this time it was the judgment that did it, not the seal. And then another one for getting mana back and stuff like that. So as a Retribution Paladin, Crusader Strike, if you put judgments, different paladins could put judgments on things, your Crusader Strike would refresh the duration. So you used to try and get Holy Paladins to judge with different judgments, and you'd keep them all up. Assuming you didn't miss. And so basically, this Judgment of Light with the Wrath patch, but with level 70 stuff, was so powerful that as a DPS, without casting any heals at all, I was topping the healing meters. The healers actively banned me from using Judgment of Light. They refused to let me use it. Because everyone was just healing themselves up by hitting the bloody boss. It was almost like, what do we even need healers for? It's absolutely insane. That is one reason why I think the damage meter has been increasingly more detrimental to the game. Yeah, I don't think about it increasingly. They've always been bad. Always. They've been there right from the start. They were in there in Molten Core. And the same effect, people focusing on the DPS meters was always a thing. This is why, if anyone ever watched me stream, I generally did not have the damage meter showing. Because even if you're someone who likes to behave themselves, it's a distraction. You can't help notice it. So just get rid of it. But people don't. And because you're focusing in a part of the screen where nothing is happening, apart from a bar is moving up and down, you completely miss everything going on around you. Those are the first people to die to stupid shit appearing under their feet. Or missing ads, being slow to get onto the ads. Because they're not looking at where the ads are coming from. They rely on someone shouting ads, at which point they'll drag their eyes up from the bloody corner of their screen. I say corner of their screen. I've seen some people's UIs and they have a big old damage meter and then a big old healing meter at the side of it. Like, as if anyone... Why do you need both? I don't understand. Anyway, doesn't matter. I don't have to raid anymore. I don't have to worry about these things anymore. I don't have to see someone dying to an obvious mechanic and going, the reason you've done that is because you were looking at your damage meter. There is no way a player of your intelligence and skill would ever die to that if you were paying attention to your character. Don't have to worry about it anymore. It's done. Finished. You really miss multiple seals, auras and judgments. I don't miss the multiple seals. I would like a functioning seal system. Don't get me wrong. But the seals as they were, I don't miss that. I do not miss that at all. It was annoying. I also don't miss having to seal, judge, reseal as well. How do I feel about professions? I think professions have improved. It's just that, like, I used to like... Well, I do. I always like professions in MMOs. I like doing them. But I think it's dated. And although I think they've improved it, it's not like they've left it alone. The core way the profession system works is just straight up not as good as in some other games. And I don't know whether Blizzard maybe feel it's just to radically change it would be too much. I don't know. But I just feel that, yeah, it's... I don't think it works in a modern MMO as well, even though they've improved it, as I say. I just think the way it works is just not as good. Interestingly, I was watching, again, Az did a video, and I watched this one, actually, because he was comparing World of Warcraft with Elder Scrolls Online. I've done some videos comparing those on a few things. And as well Final Fantasy, which I've never really got into. Final Fantasy 14, I've never really been a fan of it. Just because of the style of it, not because of, I don't think the game's bad. I just couldn't get into it. And hi everyone, better, thank you. But no, sorry, Azeroth changes. The title of this stream is wrong. Sorry, it's left over from last week. My apologies. I completely forgot. Where was I? Something. Oh yeah. So he was explaining something about the Final Fantasy crafting system. Which sounds intriguing. So when you've got a game like Final Fantasy, which may well have a better profession system, and Elder Scrolls Online, which I know has a better profession system because I played that game, than WoW, it's just a bit disappointing when I've experienced better. But do I miss raiding? I do miss raiding, but at the same time, I'm a very pragmatic person. I'm not someone who like dwells on something. The bottom line is, I do not have the time to do it. I just don't have the time to do it. I knew I wasn't going to have the time to do it before summer, and I have even less time. I mean, way less time than I thought I did now. Work is insane at the moment. So it's just not possible. So it's like one of those things. Oh, can't do it. It's a bit like, you know, going back to my teenage failure days when I was a late teen. I wanted to be a doctor originally. I'm not a doctor, some of the more perceptive of you will notice. This is because basically I got knocked back by the medical schools, so I basically said, oh, it's fine, I'll be a physics teacher then. You know, I didn't brood about, well, I sulked a little bit, but effectively I just went straight to the next plan. It's like, well, I like physics, I like teaching, I'll be a physics teacher, which is what I did. So there you go. And that's the attitude I have. If I can't have what I want, I just do something else, which is what I've done. So am I done with raiding altogether? Basically, yeah. No time. I've no time to sort of do a regular thing. Even the reason I haven't done Mythic Plus this week, remember, is we've got this group of players. It didn't look like we were going to go ahead on Friday, so then Saturday was no go. Then it got to Sunday, and it was like, oh, one person's missing, so we didn't get to go. I could have just hung around online. I could have done that and waited for, because I'm in a raiding guild, I'm a social in a raiding guild, someone eventually would have said, oh, we need a DPS for Mythic Plus, and I'd have been able to go along there. I think my item level is enough to do plus 10s, all right. So yeah, I could have done, but I don't want to spend the time doing that either, because it's taken away from other things. So I'm okay with it. I'm absolutely fine with it. So I miss it, but I don't pine on it or anything like that. I'll just move. I'll just do other things. I'm doing a bit more Warhammer at the moment anyway. Obviously, what I'd really like is to be able to, like I always say, I always like something I can do seriously. Now, Warhammer at the moment is not an outlet for that, because at the gaming group I'm at, there aren't any die-hard Age of Sigmar players with 2,000 point armors and all the rest of it. So at the moment, I don't really have, other than the odd casual game of 1,000 points, I don't have the outlet that way. Hopefully at some point I can start going to tournaments, and maybe it will then, I don't know. But I am going to need something. At some point in the next half a year, I am going to get itchy feet and want to do something competitively. And for the rest of this year, it's not going to be Mythic rated at all. I'm never going to have time for it again, unless I win the lottery. And even then, I might not. I still might not. You loved empowered seals in WoD. Yeah, I didn't. It's just unnecessary cycling around. There was no thinking about it. It was just something you had to do. It was a bit like in Warhammer Online. If you played the Chaos Warrior, you had auras. And you applied this aura, and it did something like, I think it lasted for 8 seconds. Oh, no, that's not true. Basically, yeah, okay, there were different aura abilities. I've got it now. And they were on like a 3-second, not global cooldown, but aura cooldown. So after 3 seconds, you could activate another one. Now, when you activated the new one, it would be permanent, but the one you previously had would only last for another 8 seconds. So what you used to do is you'd cycle around 3 different auras. So every 3 seconds, you'd go for the next aura ability. And all that it does is encouraging RSI, really, isn't it? It's a bad system. I don't like it. And Empowered Seals was a bit like that as well. You were just cycling between them. All right, there was a bit more thought with Empowered Seals, granted. But it was still just cycling between things. And it didn't seem fun to me at all. It wasn't engaging. I didn't like it. I used it on a couple of the bosses where it was clearly quite strong. I was quite pleased that was not many fights, though, I have to say. Oh, and PvP, I suppose it might well have, yeah. I didn't really do PvP much. What do I think BFA is lacking? In terms of content, I don't think it's lacking anything. I just think the Azeroth, I just think the systems are not working correctly. And I just think they're not really listening to what the subscribers want. It's not what I think BFA is lacking, it's what I think World of Warcraft is lacking. And it's the same thing I've thought has been lacking for several years. And that is, there is not enough content that rewards cosmetic stuff. They need more of that. Like, there's loads of achievements in the game, aren't there? And some of those achievements take you quite a long time to do. And what do you get for it? Nothing. A lot of them. Nothing. Maybe you get a title, and some people like the title. Behind every significant achievement, there should be cosmetic gear. If they put in player housing, then that would mean that behind every single significant achievement, they could put either some player housing decoration type thing, or a pet, or a mount. A unique one, not a recolor. They could easily do that, and I guarantee that would have people playing with much more interest. Because ultimately, whether people think content is fun or not, generally depends on what they get out of it. And power upgrades, I just cannot understand why Blizzard do not get this into their heads. Power upgrades are not a sufficient draw for the vast majority of players, because they don't need them. I do not need the gear I have to do world quests, you know. So, I mean, okay, I did the Warfront because of the 370 gear. It doesn't take that long. Why wouldn't I do it? But I'm not going to be encouraged to do lots of... I don't do the islands, for example. I don't give a crap. Even though that would get me a definite upgrade. I should go on every day and at least do the Champions of Azeroth thing. I would have been exalted with Champions of Azeroth by then, and my neck would be better. I don't care, because I don't need it to be better. Whereas if they put content in where I could get a nice table for my house, like a really nice table, I'll do that. Elder Scrolls Online, for example, I have not played that in now months. Not because I've gone off it, just in time, and there's other things I'm wanting to do more. But every now and then they do something that's like, if you play over the next few days and do a thing, you get a thing. And it's all cosmetic rewards. I log on to do the thing. I absolutely log on to do the thing. Because I know that those cosmetic rewards will still be there for me in a year or 2 years' time. If they offered power rewards, I would go, no, I'm not interested, because I'm not playing at the moment anyway. What's good's it to me? They have to be interesting cosmetically as well, of course. It has to be desirable things. But cosmetic things last forever. If you give someone player housing, someone really creative could spend a year making it brilliant. You know, and by putting rewards behind achievements, which are naturally in the game anyway, that's not extra content, that's already there. And by having, you know these little micro holidays they have, put more of those in, which don't take any development time, but put something cosmetic behind those. Some of them have something cosmetic, and some of them don't. Just put something nice. And when it's a pet, a unique pet. You know, something that's, if you play this particular weekend, you will get this pet. There is no way you are getting this pet any other way. If you do not play this weekend, you ain't getting it ever. And it doesn't look like another pet we've already got in the game. And we're not going to recolour it and put it back in, sneak it into the game some other way later. Your bullet time, WoW switching to ESO was amazing. Well, the thing is, I think it's reversed. WoW and ESO are complete reverse beasts. I would not enjoy playing ESO at endgame because they have a little bit of, you know, any animation cancelling, which is a big part of playing it like min-maxing. No, that's bad. That's degenerate gameplay. But from a casual point of view, it's a brilliant game. Absolutely amazing. Everything about it is amazing. WoW, other way around. Endgame stuff is very enjoyable. The casual stuff, much less so. You know. You started to play in TBC. Remember the amazing feel exploring the world? Haven't had that feeling in years. No, neither have I. I missed that from vanilla. And I was particularly annoyed to hear that they destroyed all the 1 to 60 content with Cataclysm. I was not happy at all. Hiya, Steve. Well, yeah, I mean, this is the thing. I mean, when I quit the game, for example, you know, just before Ulduar came out, and then I came crawling back, of course, eventually. So the gear I had was worthless. All right, I came technically to play a... Well, yeah, it was. It was completely worthless, anyway, when I came back. But my cosmetic rewards was not. My Black Proto Drake, that was still fine. That's still fine now. You know, I only had a few pets back then because it wasn't such a big thing. But my Jubbling pet, which was the first pet I ever got, I think. You got that from the Dark Moon Fair. By leaving a load of dark iron tankards or something. Anyway, you know, I still had that. That was still there. The power gear was useless to me. The only reason I even kept raid gear for quite a while is because for transmog purposes. You know, there's some gear that when transmog became a thing, I thought, oh shit, I deleted it. And it looked really nice. I was really annoyed. But, you know, it only kept it for transmog. And because I don't like throwing anything away. You don't understand why they don't introduce a dye system or similar to customize our gear. Well, I gather, I can't remember them specifically saying this, but a lot of people have said this, so I'm sure it's true. I gather Blizzard have suggested that there are technical problems with doing that. However, I'm not sure I believe it. I'm not saying I don't, because we know that even if they could easily do it, Blizzard like their recolors. And a recolor would have zero value if we could just recolor it ourselves anyway, wouldn't it? Like, there's no way you could bring out exactly the same set of armor for 7 different pieces of content if the colors were down to you as a player. So, yeah, I think that's the real reason. It may be possible that it'd be technically challenging as well, because the system was never designed to allow us to recolor it, as opposed to a game that has dyes where it was built in from the ground up. Yeah, different thing. Don't know. But I strongly suspect it's much more because they heavily use recolors. You think LFR and LFG has just made WoW a really unsociable game? As a person with social anxiety, so you find it hard to get to know new all the time? Well, I don't know about that. I don't think the content's to blame personally. Ultimately, the game has always been fairly unsociable in a pug type environment. All right, there was a bit more in Dungeons in vanilla. There was a bit more of an element of having to get along, so there was a bit more input there. But in TBC, when it became quicker to do dungeons, and they brought in, although it's not the dungeon finder tool we have now, but they did bring in a dungeon finder tool, the unsociability came in then, I think. You know. But I would say more from a social point of view, what you really need is a guild. You need to find a guild of players that are, you know, on your wavelength, really. You would love mount add-ons like glow or new armor. That actually could work with some mounts, couldn't it? If they designed it to have different types of barding, then it might allow you. That could be another piece of content. Go and do this thing or complete this achievement, and you get this thing for a mount that already exists. Maybe. Although I don't think they could easily add that now. That would require them to redesign all the mounts probably at this point. But if you're building a game from the ground up, maybe something like that. Looking for a guild, same it's always been. No one who takes the game seriously plays in LFR or FG to look for people. Well, no. You wish they would make the entire Azeroth world meaningful again. Again, if they could easily do this with, you know, going to find things that search things out for. Well, still, it wants to be cosmetic rewards. You know. Do you remember in Vanilla, in Plaguelands, where you had those blood puddles? What was it called? Where you got the blood of heroes. But they were random. I mean, they weren't truly random because they had spawn points. But these days you could make it truly random. But, you know, that's something like that would be quite good. You know, the fact that you want to be out in the world because it's the only place to get this component which you need to make a thing. And again, if the making the thing wasn't a power upgrade, because the problem is with that is then people will be saying, oh, you've got to go out in the world, you know, from Raiders' point of view. Because I always think about it from Raider, it's bad enough that Raiders, well, obviously having to raid is not a bad thing because that's what they want to do. But having to do Mythic Plus dungeons and having to do PvP and having to do world quests and all the rest of it, the last thing you need to say to those players is, by the way, if you want the really best gear, you've got to just run around the zones like you're a bloody herbalist hoping to find some of these reagents. But if those reagents just randomly spawned, it encouraged you to be out in the world, but it was for a cosmetic thing, you know, building some cosmetic gear, whether it be furniture for a player house or gear for yourself to wear, that sort of thing would get people out in the world potentially. You'd need more than just that, but it'd be one of those elements that would make it worthwhile you going out there. You know. The closest thing to explanation of the puzzles they've added. Well, it depends what do you mean the puzzles like for that unicorn type mount thing? In the last one, that dark one. But true explanation will never happen again. Already know too much about the world. I don't think that's the limiting factor. Obviously, it's more difficult because in the first form of a game, you always have way more zones than any expansion will ever add. But they can always, there's nothing to stop them adding little things for you to come across. Now, it's no good... Lucid Nightmare, that's it, thank you. It's no good adding things that have a fixed location because it'll just be data mined and be up on Wowhead. It needs to be things that can randomly spawn. They need to encourage you to go into the world. You know, they need... I mean, I keep saying it, and it's probably boring for people who don't like the game, but Elder Scrolls Online just does it so well. You've got regular events. There's always some event, or not always, but very regularly there's an event going on that requires you to go out into the world. And, you know, and you get useful cosmetic rewards from it. There's always a reason to go out into the world. And Blizzard could easily add these things into WoW. And they could put their own spin on it, of course. You know, Blizzard have in the past been very successful at not just going, oh, that's a good idea, but actually making it even better and putting it in WoW. You know, I've seen them take things from games before and make them even better. They don't seem to do that anymore. You love that maze. I never do. I say I'm not a mount collector, so I wasn't that bothered. Do you think they will ever take the time and effort to make Azeroth a makeover? No, I hope not. God, look what happened the last time they did that. They destroyed my vanilla content. They killed it all off. And now it's a chronological nightmare. Because I keep saying, a new player now, let's say they're a human player, all right? They first of all get told that, oh, you know, stuff's happening like dragonflights, Neltharion, whatever the hell. And then you go and get told, oh, in the wake of the war against the Lich King, we're all poor now and we're all starving and Stormwind isn't helping us out. And then you go through all the rest of the crap and it's all about old gods and the return of Deathwing. And then you get to level 58 and you go off to Outland where some sanity prevails. And then you finish in Outland. And then Stormwind tells you to go to Northrend to fight the Lich King. And you're saying, hang on a minute, there's people in Westfall saying that the Lich King's dead, but they're all now poor and starving. What's going on here? And then you get to the next bit and you do Cataclysm content, which again ramps up the Deathwing thing. And then it sends you off to Pandaland. It's like, what happened to Deathwing? Oh, you missed that out because you didn't do the raids. It's like it's a nightmare. The storyline is nonsensical for a new player. It's a complete shambles. Ideally, they would introduce player housing where you can display the heads of bosses you killed. There's all sorts of things they could do. All sorts of things they could do. Like the trophies from raids and stuff is the ideal thing to be able to put into a guild hall. Because it shouldn't just be individual player housing. If they really wanted to go for it, you'd have guild housing as well. Where in the guard, just like in Lord of the Rings Online when you wander around, only it'd be updated better, resources look better. You have trophies from the various bosses they've nobbled. You know. You could even, right, now that they've got the leaderboard, you know your guild has got a world position. What's to stop them doing this in your guild hall? Having a pennant for every major boss you've killed with your world ranking on it. You know, you could walk past and there'd be a pennant with like a trophy from Uldir, like, you know, Gahoon or something, a bit of Gahoon. It's like his tooth or something, I don't know, or his arsehole, I don't care. But you have like 76 on it. And it could be blue if you're Alliance and red if you're Horde. There's nothing to stop them doing that, is there? No great technical challenge with that, surely. And it opens it up to so many things. You know, imagine, you know, every now and then Method doing a stream where they show you around their guild hall, for goodness sake. Be amazing. What have I done? Hang on, let's read. After getting that mount, the Lucid Nightmare, you bought the game in the auction house, the one you uncross lines. All right. Well, I think there will be more things like that. I think they consider that a success in Legion. I think they will put stuff like that in again. They could just do something like the old daily system for the old world. We'd go do a challenge of some sort. No, that would be dull. Well, some people might like it. I wouldn't. I think that would be dull. I mean, the problem is you're talking about spending maybe 10 minutes, 15 minutes getting to a place to do a thing and then coming back. That's I mean, you get away with that every now and then. Obviously, you know when coming up to Christmas, and we'll have the Winter's Veil thing, where you'll go to Ironforge or Orgrimmar, I suppose now, with an orc dressed as Santa, as if anyone's going to fall for that, and you'll pick up the quest from the Goblin, go and kill the Grinch, come back again. That's not actually fun, is it? It's not really fun. To do that on a daily, you sort of get away with it over Christmas. No one's doing anything anyway. Literally, no one's doing anything. They don't even watch YouTube. The views on my YouTube channel plummet in December. People must go outside for some reason. And I can understand it in Australia. It's summer, but bloody hell. When you compare Ashenvale to Val'sharah or Voldun to Tanaris, you just want the whole game world to be that beautiful. Yeah, but they'll make a mess of it. They'll muck up quests. Well, they can't make more of a mess of Tanaris. I used to love that zone. Hate it now. Apart from the only thing in Tanaris that's still nice is the fact that they've got that little story and footprints through it that you can follow. That's quite nice. That's the sort of stuff they do still do, to be fair. Little touches like that you can easily miss. They're at least flirting with us returning to old zones via the quest drops in islands. Well, I don't do islands, but with Warfronts as well, I suppose. Yes, reusing old zones is at least better. Diablo 4 cancelled. Warcraft 2 movie is going to be the big thing. There isn't going to be a Warcraft 2 movie because unfortunately it made a loss, so it's not actually going to happen. As annoying as that is, you think they should import classic leveling and make it the default 1 to 60 experience? Maybe the Kata intro zones could be phased for 80. Well, I would just have everything fully scaled, and I would massively shorten the amount of time necessary to get to level cap. Like, massively. There's no need for it. And the thing is, if it's all scaled, the people who say they enjoy the leveling content can still do it, because those quests would still be relevant for your level. You loved learning how to actually tank on your paladin. Having that artifact skin was oh yeah, the with the chain, with the same with the warrior one. Oh yeah, that's the only reason I did that Mage Tower challenge. I had no interest in doing it really I didn't do it for holy because I didn't care about the holy weapon. But there was no way I was getting away without having the flail. It does look awesome. My only disappointment with it is that it drags on the if it dragged on the ground, it wouldn't be as bad. But of course, it sinks into the ground, of course. So it's like, when you're swinging it around, it's brilliant. But when you're just walking around with it holstered, that's annoying. But anyway. Did the movie do really well in China? Yes and no. You've got to remember, in China, they only allow so many Western imports. So a lot of films simply wouldn't even get to compete with it over there. And the other thing, even in China, the thing is, the way it worked is, China, yes, it did well enough to have, if it did like that everywhere, it definitely would have got a sequel. Europe, it did okay. It wasn't bad. America obviously bombed. Now, you've got, but the problem with it was that someone pointed out a long time later, which was very interesting, was all the ticket sales effectively came in the first couple of weeks. In other words, because what normally happens with a film, even a well-received film, okay, you'll get a load of people who are really excited and go and watch it to begin with. There's a lot of people who are basically waiting to see what their friends thought of it before, or waiting for a recommendation before they'll go and see it. That didn't happen. So, and that's where you get the sales continuing for the following weeks, and it massively dipped in all territories. It went, whatever it made in its opening week, it plummeted after that. So basically what was happening is all the Warcraft fans went to see it. Some other people got dragged along as well. Some other people went to see it out of curiosity, but you weren't getting a significant number of people recommending it. So, hi Gary Steele. How are the discussions going? Very well, I think. People will be disappointed if a new movie is the big thing. There is not. Even Duncan Jones basically has already abandoned the notion. You know, he'd like to do it, of course, or he'd like there to be one. But he, you know, because he said something like about a year ago that basically says, yeah, they're not really doing it. I mean, I liked it. In order for a movie to enter China, there has to be some sort of Chinese element or an actor or actress in the movie. Well, it's sort of. They will. I mean, they usually try and do that to try and do it. Ultimately, it's like there is a quota. There's a quota on Western films that can get in. Warcraft probably got in on the basis of the fact that it's popular in China as a game. Obviously, you know, they knew it would do well, and Chinese theatres want to make money like anyone else's. But they, which is not unfair, really, but even though you might say it's anti-competition, they're a bit like France in many ways. France and China, their theatres both try to encourage their own cultural films. So, yes, there is a quota. They already sold the props. Well, they did. It wouldn't stop them making a sequel, but it certainly means that production... Because, you know, the story presumably would have followed straight on, and a lot of those props you'd have still wanted. So it does suggest that studio certainly doesn't want to take over. But at the end of the day, it made a loss. The bottom line is, people fund films to make money. The people who really want that film to be made are the people who push for it, in this case, Duncan Jones. But the bottom line is that the studios who finance it want to make money. And it didn't. It's not even that it didn't make much money. It made a loss. So, yeah. That is not a recipe for a sequel. There's a severe shortage of how prevalent magic is in Warcraft and how many people required screen time. The number of... Yeah, I think they chose the wrong story. It's all very romantic thinking, well, let's do it right from the start. That was a bad idea because, yes, there were a lot of major characters they should have, like... And it's not like you really wanted to miss any out either. It could be argued they did miss some out. So that wasn't ideal. Like I imagine, I mean, to be fair, I did watch it doing, and I thought to myself, there was one scene where Lane said Anduin. And I thought to myself, hang on a minute, all the way through the film he's been called Lothar. Now I know his name is Anduin Lothar. But someone just watching it who doesn't know anything about Warcraft doesn't know that. What do they think? Anduin might be his title for all they know. It might be some Azerothian word for captain. You know, or it might be a pet name or something. They don't know what's going on. So, and there wasn't, so there were too many characters. Can't do that. And also the fact, a lot of people in America especially just got cheesed off because, you know, Lord of the Rings rip-off because it's orcs. They shouldn't have done that story. They should have done Scourge, Lich King story. Because then it wouldn't have drawn parallels with any other major fantasy film, and there would have been fewer characters needed, and they could easily have done that. It's a better story as well, quite frankly. Anduin, isn't that where Sean Bean died? Yes. Quite very good. Duncan Jones is doing the Rogue Trooper movie. Yes, so I saw. Not that I know much about that. I've not really been a fan of 2000 AD. Someone was actually telling me at work, because they were someone who was a kid read 2000 AD. That there's a major illustrator that worked on it, who was quite famous. who died recently. So, but I don't know anything about it. Never really read it. Wasn't Gul'dan played by a popular Chinese actor? It was played by a Chinese actor. I don't know whether it was popular or not. He may have been. It may have been. But nonetheless, I think what got it in is not just that. I don't think it's just a case of, oh, we'll put a Chinese actor in it, then we're guaranteed to get played in China. I think it was because there's still a quota. There are more films that have Asian actors in them than because I think it's like 10 a year. I think it's literally like 10 a year or something like that. They're really severe with it. You turned in your emissary too early and only got 340 Azeroth gear. Your item was 372. Luckily enough, it was a helmet, so it wouldn't have been an upgrade even at level 370. Oh, there you go. You're still rocking level 345 shoulders. Yeah, I've still got 340 shoulders, but I'm not moaning about it because I don't need any more. A lot of people pirated it too. Well, that's the case with any film, though, isn't it? That's just, unfortunately, the case for any film. If a new class had to be implemented, what kind of class do you think would help the game? Ranged. Bloody ranged. And no melee specs. I don't mean a class that has a ranged and a melee spec. No. No more melee. Ranged. I mean, we've talked about this before on the channel, haven't we? Like, a necromancer would sort of work. Well, I actually query that now. Would it work, a necromancer? In theory, it would work because it's been in the Warcraft game before, and it would clearly be ranged. The downside would be, obviously, it would steal abilities from Death Knights and potentially Warlocks as well. Warlocks must be getting well pissed off with all this by now. Because first of all, Death Knights came along and nicked some of their abilities. Then Demon Hunters came along and nicked some more abilities. If you even say the word Necromancer as a new class, I imagine every Warlock player will be going, no, my abilities, stay away, get off, leave them alone. Oh yeah, Shockedin, yeah, absolutely. If they're going to add range specs to classes that currently only have melee specs, I'm all for that. I'll play a Shockedin, no problem. So yeah, but the problem is, someone was querying this because I was saying in that video yesterday. Was it yesterday? I didn't do it yesterday, so I can't remember. I'm pretty sure I brought it out yesterday, and I was saying that although obviously the Horde is going much more into open necromancy now, which was always frowned upon by the previous war chiefs. Well, more than frowned upon, banned basically. That nonetheless, because the Horde have had necromancy in their history, that they shouldn't be that high and mighty about it. And someone was making the point that, well, yes, that was in the past when Gul'dan was about, but since then they've been dead against it. I would still argue that they still did it. It was still the same orcs that were okay with it. But anyway, but it does raise the question: would a necromancer class fit into the modern Warcraft story? Given that even warlocks are supposed to be underground, in every city where you have a warlock trainer, they're always in some dark, usually underground corner. It took me ages in vanilla as well. It took me ages to find the warlock trainer in Stormwind. It's in the slaughtered lamb, but down properly right in the basement. Bard class? No. Wouldn't work. They don't do support classes in World of Warcraft. They can't do that. Oh yeah, obviously, whatever class they give to one, they have to give to the other. So Alliance would have to have necromancers as well, absolutely. It would be aesthetically hard to set apart from DK and locks. So would everything. Everything would. Like, I can't imagine a new class. Obviously, you keep saying Bard or Tinkerer. Those wouldn't work in World of Warcraft because World of Warcraft doesn't believe in support classes. It only believes in tanking, healing, melee DPS and rage DPS. So I don't think Tinker is more likely at all because it wouldn't fit. It has to be a DPS. I can't think of anything you could make where someone wouldn't query it. Like, I would have preferred it if, for example, for Demon Hunters, you know, they had one melee spec and one tanky spec. I'd have come up with a range spec that had a bit of a dark ranger aspect to it. So another bow using class, but obviously it could play more like a demon hunter than a hunter, but still use a bow, and that would add another bow using class to the game, which would have been bloody useful now that we've got personal loot. Poor hunters. I feel sorry for hunters. Well, shadow hunters, whatever you want to call them. Ranged male class tinkerer uses guns, throws bombs, uses tech. Major cooldown is a mech suit available to... No. It should only be available to gnomes if their stuff always breaks down. If there's a chance every time they use an ability that the whole thing explodes and does 80% of their health in damage, then I would be in favour of that tinker class for gnomes. Only then. Disc Priest is kind of a support, don't I think? No. I think it's a half healer, half DPS. Although I'm not entirely sure exactly how it's working in BFA, I have to confess, because I haven't played it either on the alpha, beta or wherever. But certainly in Legion, it was a half healer, half DPS, which was bloody useful from a raiding point of view if you're in that awkward position of you've got 4 healers, you've got slightly more healing than you need, but if you dropped a healer, you wouldn't quite have enough. Oh, enter the Disc Priest. Perfect. I have no short hate. You will notice I had no quibble with the goblin. I have no issues with gnomes, other than the fact that they need not to be alive. That's it. They just need to be silenced. If they were just quiet and didn't jump up and down, like they've just done something clever, then I would have no issue with them at all. But they don't. They're annoying. They squeak and they jump up and down like they've done something clever when they've cast the simplest of spells. But it's not short hate, because I have never said anything derogatory about goblins or dwarfs. Who would I destroy first? Zappy Boy knows. I've already destroyed Zappy Boy. I've told you. He probably just reincarnated on the sly. I'll watch him next time. I'm going to corpse camp him next time. So, you know, he's useless. Gnomes are the greater threat. Zappy Boy isn't actually a threat. He's just annoying. Perhaps Blizzard should rummage through Wizards of the Coast back catalogue for some inspiration. What on gnomes? Well, at least in Dungeons and Dragons, gnomes are... No one gives gnomes any dignity. Gnomes are an annoying race, and everyone treats them like they're annoying. You're not even allowed to roleplay it not being annoying. If the film production is Chinese, they don't suffer a penalty. No, well, that's true. Zappy Boy reincarnates as a gnome. Oh, he's dead. If he does that, he's dead. You actually like female gnomes. They're cute. Well, of course they're cute. Male gnomes are grotesque. See, that's the thing. I tried to argue that in that gnome video I did a few years ago. Was one of my points. This is genetics at work. Nature itself is trying to eradicate the gnome race because the females are cute, but the males are repulsive. So inevitably, you're not actually going to get males and female gnomes mating. You know, because the female gnomes are going to have nothing to do with the male gnomes. They'll go off and hump some other race and produce some half gnome creature. And then eventually the gnome DNA will just get more and more diluted until it's been eradicated completely. You know, so even nature is trying to get rid of that race. I mean, you notice in Before the Storm, there was an interracial relationship between a gnome and a goblin. That was a female gnome. They're not messing about with male gnomes. You don't have any male gnome, female gnome couples in there. I've never seen any such thing. Gnome in dwarf heritage armor is a gnome mech bot. Haven't they stolen enough from the dwarfs already? I'm not pro-eugenics. I'm not saying they should be sterilised. What I'm saying is that nature is doing it for them. It's a natural act. This is not man-made. This is not us forcing it upon them. It's just happening. It's in the game. The writers know exactly what the score is. Like I say, the proof of the pudding is the fact that that female gnome in that book was attracted to a goblin. And, you know, they're not exactly oil paintings, but far superior to a male gnome. You take it I'm not participating in the Great Gnome Run at the weekend. No. I got into a lot of trouble. Well, I didn't get into a lot of trouble. I got some minor moaning at when I said something about it last year. So, given the cause it's for. So, I won't say anything this year. But no, I won't. I'm not turning my character into a gnome. But, you know, even the game acknowledges that they shouldn't be a thing. So, I don't know why they are. I was also dismayed to learn, bit of a spoiler, but whereas in the novel we didn't actually know whether the gnome and the goblin survived, I sort of suspected that if ever we did find out that I would know the answer because they're just soft like that. But indeed it has been revealed that they survived, which is disappointing, but not unexpected. Female gnome mating an ogre, I don't think that would be a thing. I think there'd have to be intermediate steps. I mean, that would be one way to kill off the gnomes. But, yes, that doesn't actually bear thinking about. Hide out in the bushes and gank running gnomes. I did suggest this last year. And then everyone said I was mean for attacking an event that is there to, like, raise funds for cancer or something. Would it be easier to add one spec to all classes? It would be easier to remove one spec from all classes. Or add a ranged spec to every class that currently doesn't have a ranged spec. That would be easier. That would be better. Where was it said they survived? In the PTR. You can come across them in the PTR apparently. From the Alliance point of view, I've not seen it myself because I don't have an Alliance 120 character to do the PTR stuff. But yeah. I saw it on Wowhead. So it must be true. There is a gnome with a human wife. No. What? Where? Is there? That doesn't sound right. I think what you mean is there's a woman with a gnome pet. I think that's what that is. You seem to be confused there. You could see an explosives expert class for sure. No. There already is one. It's a hunter. That's what survival hunters are supposed to be. They're just not very good at it. Because some fool gave them a spear and a way to do a shitload of DPS with it. So they neglect their bomb duties. But that's what survival hunters are supposed to be. Lay explosives. Blow things up. Do I think that there are some big announcements going to be at BlizzCon? Of course, there's always big announcements. Huge company. They wouldn't do anything as stupid as not make a big announcement. You know, I mean, I'm always amazed there isn't a big announcement for every one of their major games. But there certainly have to be for their biggest games. Overwatch and World of Warcraft will always have to have some major announcements. Obviously, the major announcement for WoW will be along two lines. One, upcoming content in BFA that hasn't been announced up to that point. And two, Classic WoW. Because they'll be lynched if they don't say anything about Classic WoW. Because they announced it at last BlizzCon. Nothing since. They've been hiring. They will announce Diablo 4. They may announce Diablo 4. I don't know about that. They certainly ought to announce something for Diablo at some point. In Sholazar Basin. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that that's a woman with a gnome pet. I'm not quite sure what gives you the impression they're married. Diablo Mobile. I do hope they stay away from the mobile market, but I have little hope. I think ultimately games companies will always try and get into either the mobile market or the console market. Potentially both. And it is notable, isn't it, that, all right, I suppose you've got Hearthstone, but they're not really big into it, are they? Which I don't think can last forever. Tamara Wobble Sprocket is a level 77 human quest giver found at blah, blah, blah. She is the wife of Marvin Wobble Sprocket, whom she accompanied on the expedition. No. They've made a mistake there. He's her pet. Maybe they're just pretending to be married for some reasons. There's no way they're married. It's a sham marriage. It's not even real. They're just saying it is. I want to see the wedding certificate. They said there will be a classic panel. There has to be. There's no way there couldn't be. Or there would be blood on the floor. Would it be plausible to say that Activision is slowly absorbing Blizzard by retiring key influential people within Blizzard? I don't know. How many people have actually really been retired? Chris Metzen did it, but to be fair, that made sense because he always said that he hated the administration and dealing with dickheads, basically, that came with being a senior executive. He didn't like it. It wasn't a creative job for him. So I think that's what happened. He got promoted. It's a classic case of he got promoted into positions that had nothing to do with the work that he was so good at. And I'm not saying he didn't do a good job, but he didn't like the nature of the work. It was always, he always called it like, trying to get consensus between people who were arguing with each other and shit like that. He didn't like it. I'm not sure that other people have really been retired. People have been taken off one project, but they're still at Blizzard, aren't they? Is there anyone I'm missing? Is there anyone I'm forgetting about? Do I think there's a plausible way to implement a third faction? No. There's no point in implementing a third faction. The only reason a third faction is ever needed in any MMO is where you have world PvP. Because one faction will always, if you have two, be dominant over the other because it'll just get larger. But the thing is, there is no such thing as world. I mean, I'm not even talking about the fact that I think it's crap. It's all instanced. Blizzard can control very carefully the number of players on either faction in an area. So it loses its use. And all it would have coming this late in the game is the detrimental effect of splitting people up who've been like in the same guild or friends or playing the same faction or whatever. So there's no benefit to it. There is zero benefit, and there are only downsides. So they'll never do it. It would be a ridiculous idea. What would be more likely is some, like I've said before, blurring of the lines from a PvE point of view. Letting people actually play together even when they want to be in different factions, like you can in other modern MMOs. Sham marriage for the RIN tax write-off. Oh yeah, that would be like a gnome to do that. Tax fiddle. Yeah, I can believe that. Married for Stormwind citizenship. Maybe. Although if they've gone to Northrend, I'm not sure they're making best use out of it. WoW for mobile phones, please. God, no. No. People have said this ironically about some of the changes to classes. It'd be like, oh yeah, this might actually work on a console. Could you see WoW being on a console? And people are saying it jokingly, but don't joke about things like that. But I tell you what I do think. I think absolutely if they ever made another MMO, for whatever, it doesn't have to be Warcraft, it could be a StarCraft MMO, whatever, I would be amazed if it were not made primarily for a console. I think console more likely than mobile, even though, you can do them on mobiles as well. I suspect console would be more up their street. Do I think that people that are going to play Classic play it for a long time, or is it just 2 month hype thing? Okay, so we're coming to the end anyway, so we'll finish off on the Classic thing. Here's what I think. I think there are people, and I know some people can't get their heads around this. There are people who love World of Warcraft from vanilla. and would like it to stay, and they're just happy playing that. We know that because people do. All right, they don't do it strictly within the rules, but so there are people who would love to play it, and they will not get bored of it because they like playing that game. I don't know why that's so difficult to understand. Every couple of years I play through, actually it's now going to be 3 years because I would have been due to play it through this summer and didn't. So next summer I'll be playing through Baldur's Gate again. I do that. It's the same bloody game as it's been for like 10 years. I still play through Baldur's Gate 1, 2 and 2 and a bit. And I love it. I also reread Lord of the Rings every couple of years. That doesn't change every time I read it. It's still the same. Frodo's still an arsehole, but I still read it. So some people are fine with that. Not everyone needs there to be constant change. So those players will be delighted. Possibly. Actually, no. They might be the snippiest because it depends on exactly what the format is. Because they're going to bring it out at a set point, aren't they? So how they implement the classic will, of course, annoy some people and delight others. But there will be those who maybe played it back then, haven't for a long time, obviously, playing the retail version maybe or maybe not, and they'll be going, oh yeah, wasn't it great back then? And they'll find out that it actually wasn't that great. It was just great for its time because it was their first MMO, like it was mine. So there'll be the nostalgia there, rose-tinted goggles. And yes, I think there will be some people who will go back to it and think, oh, wasn't it great back then? They'll play it and think, holy shit, did I actually enjoy this? What the hell was I thinking? Yes, I think they will stop. Then there'll be those who never played it but heard how great it is. They will do the same thing. They will go onto it. They'll go up to a boar, attack it, and get eaten by the boar and go, what the fucking hell's just happened? I've just been killed by a pig. I've just been killed by a pig. What's going on? And those people will probably give up after a while. But I think there are a lot of people who will like it. And some people may play it casually like I will. And there'll be some people who play it a lot. So I definitely think it's worth doing. And people just have to accept the fact that there are people who will enjoy it. But yes, there are also people who will play it and realise it's shit. Because you know what? 15-year games are, by modern standards. So that's what I think there. But anyway, that's a nice way to round it off. So thanks very much for coming on, everyone. I'll put this up live, obviously, in a couple of hours when it processes. I will, as I say, be doing another live discussion this week. It'll be on Thursday again, but it'll be set. I'll schedule it sometime before I go to bed tonight, and it will be after they've done their live Q&A, but not immediately after. I'll give it like half an hour's grace, so we can talk about what they talk about in the live Q&A. Yes, I think that's it. So thanks for coming on, everyone, and until next time, I'll see you later.